Well, good morning, Southern Oregon, and welcome back to the Real Estate Show. I'm Alice Lema. I'll be your host today. I'm a broker here in beautiful Southern Oregon with John L. Scott Real Estate. And, I just want to comment how busy of a week we still have. Here it is, December. The holidays are right around the corner. It's cold, it's rainy. There's a lot going on, and we still have so many transactions happening. We still have a lot of people putting their house on the market. It's just amazing to watch every day, more and more listings coming on. And there's still a backlog of buyers out there and all price points. And a lot of those new listings are getting looked at and offers being written. And it really does have that early spring feel. It's busy enough. A lot of us are feeling like it's more the February, March timeframe instead of December. But that's not a bad thing. We're actually really thrilled to have all the sellers entering the market finally and getting some more homes for the buyers to choose from, and everybody taking advantage of the lower interest rate scenario, because that affects the sellers too. If the interest rates go up, that affects the buyers writing offers, or the kind of offers the buyers write for the sellers. So yippee, and thank you to all those sellers that put their house on the market. It's not a bad time. The slowdown we normally have in the winter, we're just not having that lag like we usually do. So thank you, and very exciting to see all the activity this week. We're going to be talking today to Tina Grimes. Speaking of all the activity, she's the CEO of the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors here locally. And it's going to be really interesting to talk to her this week, kind of about a year in review. The 2021 real estate market here in Southern Oregon has been all over the board. The supply problems, and then the supply chain for building materials, labor, that sort of thing has all affected our local real estate market. She's going to be bringing us up to speed on some of the legislative things that happened this year, and also giving us an idea of what's coming with the legislators next year. It's going to be a really big hotbed of conversation and lawmaking here in the state of Oregon. And she's right in the thick of it, stays on top of all of it. So we're super excited to have Tina Grimes, the CEO of the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, as our guest today. She's also going to be talking about some of the supply and demand issues just with real estate in general, as well as some of the things going on with the real estate brokers themselves and commission and buyers letters and such. So stay tuned. Tina Grimes will be our guest today. Rogue Valley Association of Realtors will be right back. Do not touch that dial. Well, welcome back to the Real Estate Show, folks, and good morning again. I'm Alice Lema, broker here in Southern Oregon with John L. Scott Real Estate. We're so excited to have Tina Grimes, the CEO of the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, with us today, kind of doing a recap of kind of what's happened this year and some things that are coming into 2022. Welcome, Tina.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes. Wow. It's been such a crazy year. And then we had our first anniversary of the Alameda fires. So why don't we start with that? Kind of where are things standing with that so far?
Yeah, it's still definitely in recovery mode, but we are seeing some rebuilding happening for sure. And I know actually it was just a couple of weeks after the first anniversary, we had an opportunity to sit down in a meeting with Representative Pam Marsh. And she talked about, she's working so hard on this. I have to give her kudos for what she has done at the state level to speed up this rebuilding process, because, and people might wonder why it has to be at a state level when it's local, but it's because our state has statewide land use laws.
Right.
So any kind of variation from those has to go through the state level rather than the local level. So she's been working very hard to get some exceptions made for rebuilding, to get just changes made to get more local control. She's got amazing ideas for doing some really creative rebuilding that would not price people out.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
Lost their homes, which has been one of the main concerns, is that, because there's no way to, when we're losing manufactured home parks that have been there for 35 and 40 years, you cannot put in something new without pricing out the people that used to live there.
Well, did you see what those are going
No.
for now? They're over
Yeah, it's
$150,000
nuts. My
for the brand new
parents
ones.
live in the Meadows RV park or in Meadows Mobile Home Park, not RV park, mobile home park, and in Central Point. And there's manufactured homes in there going for, almost $300,000. It's crazy.
And they're getting it. Yeah.
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 Yeah. They're going for just as much as stick built homes right now.
And they're older.
So yeah. Yeah. So it's crazy. It's just a crazy, crazy market and crazy time. And yeah. So I think we'll see some creative things happen in 2022. Definitely some more rebuilding going on. So
Did Representative Pam Marsh have any specific ideas that we can talk about, or is she just, kind of off making things happen as best she can?
a little of both. She mentioned some specific ideas, but none of it is right now. They are just that, ideas. None of it is
Okay.
actually on paper or in any kind of way ready to be looked at and passed or anything. So I hesitate to say anything because I don't want to put words in her
Well,
mouth.
that's why I asked.
So,
Yeah, because sometimes I know you can talk about things and sometimes you can't.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But we'll keep an eye on that because, we'll see what comes next year with some of those creative rebuilding ideas and also the exceptions. We don't get a lot of exceptions granted in anything in Oregon.
yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So, we had a busy year in real estate in general. Some of the legislative sessions changed more rules on us, which they do from time to time. Can we talk about some of those? Because we had something change in the love letter, the buyer letter. We have coming changes in commission and disclosures. Let's cover some of that, Tina.
Sure. Well, probably the biggest one that directly affects the consumer for sure is the bill that the state legislature passed that goes into effect starting January 1, that buyer love letters are now prohibited.
And let's talk about what that is in case somebody isn't knowing what we're talking about.
So that is when, and actually you're the one that's in the trenches on this, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. But that is when a buyer, in addition to their sales offer, or their offer to purchase that they give to the seller, they write a letter explaining how much they love the house and why they would want to live there. And that goes along with the offer to purchase for the seller to look at. We've seen for quite some time when sellers will say up front, no love letters accepted. And that's been a practice in place for a while, but it's not been a legislative thing. Well, now it's actually going to be legislatively prohibited to submit any kind of a love letter. And the reason that is because all too often that love letter will talk about their family life or their family structure. It will maybe include a picture. And I haven't heard about this happening locally. It may have, but I haven't heard about any of it. But I know in some areas that's been a source of major concern for discrimination practices. So Oregon, we're the first state in the country to make it legislatively not allowed to have a love letter. But that is what's going to happen effective January 1, is that buyers will not be allowed to write a love letter along with their offer to purchase. So
yeah, the state really wanted the seller to make their decision in a business-like fashion. Yeah.
And in fact, I've even heard of some, thankfully, the multiple offer frenzy is dying down. But there for a while, when we were seeing multiple offers on almost every single sale, I was even hearing about some agents who had started even blocking out the names on the offer to purchase. They just basically would put the details of each offer on a spreadsheet with the dollar, the details of it, and put that
to present to the seller.
So that they were truly making the decision based on purely objective terms. So
yeah, interesting. Yeah, the stories I heard up north in kind of the greater Portland area were some buyers that lost their bids were concerned that they were unfairly rejected based on something to do outside of the offer they made. So this way.
And I know when we say discrimination, people's minds immediately go to race, but that's not even necessarily what it is. It could be that, it could just be a personal implicit bias is the fancy term for it.
Implicit
that,
bias. Yes.
Implicit bias, where you think of things a certain way and you don't even necessarily realize you think of them that way unless somebody points it out to you. Because we all have it, no matter how you were raised, no matter what color, gender, lifestyle, anything you have, everyone has implicit bias because it's just the nature of life. And so discrimination could take all forms. It could mean that, it could be that, I'll use this as an example. Maybe a retired couple is selling, they're downsizing. And they raised a family in their home for, they lived there 40 years. They raised their kids there. They loved it there. And they get in 2 offers, and one is to a couple who has no children, and the other one is a couple that has many children. The couple that has no children offers more, but they're biased towards seeing another family with children live in that house. And so they take, so if that was the concern with the love letter piece, is that, it could cause discrimination practices, which then puts the sellers and the sellers agents in a risk position.
Yeah. And once again, Oregon is first in the nation.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of who we are, isn't it?
Yep.
So one of the other changes that was talked about this year, and I don't really know where it stands yet, is there's this idea coming out of, on the buyer side, disclosing to the buyers what the buyer's agent is getting paid. Can we talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. So definitely one of the things that, and this isn't just our industry, I think it's true of all industries across the board, is an effort to be more transparent with consumers about what's really going on. So, for a long time, sellers enter into a listing agreement with the listing broker, and part of that agreement is how much commission that listing broker is going to make for that sale. The listing broker then puts the property in the MLS, and they make an offer of compensation to whoever the buyer's agent is. And for a long time, it's been, I won't say a standard of practice, not necessarily, but there's been this assumption, that's probably a better word, that buyer's agents, that the buyers don't have to pay anything to a buyer's agent because it's going through the listing broker when a sale happens. Well, really, that's not quite the case, because obviously that commission to the listing broker, and then in turn from the listing broker to the buyer's broker, is not going to happen unless the buyer buys the property.
Right.
So the idea that a buyer's broker doesn't, the buyer doesn't have to pay the buyer's broker anything is kind of it's a misassumption. So there were efforts made, and this isn't a legislative thing. This is actually policy that came out of the National Association of Realtors. So it'll apply to realtors nationwide, is that now MLSs must include that offer of compensation to the buyer's broker in any data we provide for you guys to put on your websites. It is up to you whether or not you display it, though. You don't have to display it if you don't want to. We just have to provide it so that you can display it if you want to. There's no requirement that you display it. It's your choice.
Okay, so I love transparency, and I also love that this was an idea generated out of the National Association of Realtors directly. That self-regulation, I think the Realtor organization is super good about that.
Yeah.
Very proud of that. So the publishing on the listing for the consumer to see what the buyer is going to be paid, is that what you're talking about?
What the buyer's broker will get.
What the buyer's broker, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mouth
is going slower than my mind.
So, you go to, johnlscott.com, and you can look at listings, you can look at properties. Well, that information comes from what's called a data feed from the MLS. And so the policy that passed is that MLSs must now include that field, which before it was considered a confidential field. So it wasn't ever included.
Gotcha.
So now that field is no longer considered a confidential field. It must be included in the feed. but it's really up to the broker whose website that is as to whether or not they actually want to display it.
Well, I hope that all brokers choose to display it. It's also nice for the public to understand the job that the buyer's agent performs, because I think there was a lot of misconception, not only that, wow, the buyer's agent's working for free.
Right.
So, and then I guess, oh, go ahead.
And that's a secondary piece that got passed as well, is that the brokers can no longer advertise their services, whether you're a listing broker or buyer broker. You cannot advertise your services as free unless you genuinely are receiving no compensation for that service.
Well, what would be an example?
So like, for example, so buyers brokers for sure cannot say, hey, use me as your broker. It doesn't cost you anything. It's free because I get paid by the listing agent. Well, that's not really true, as we said, because without the buyer buying the property, nobody gets paid. So, so that's a good example of that. You know, an example of what you could still, so at whether, no matter what kind of broker you are, if you offer, you know, hey, I will give you a free CMA for your house, if you know, as a courtesy and in hopes of getting their business. So that's the kind of thing you could still say, yes, I'm offering that for free, because you're not going to get paid for doing that.
Unless you tell them you're charging for that.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's the deal, is you can't advert. And the main thrust of that was to prevent buyers brokers from saying, hey, my services are free to potential buyers.
Yeah. Well, it's just so many changes, and we've got more to talk about with Tina Grimes, the CEO of Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. Do not touch that dial. We've got more interesting conversation coming right up. Well, welcome back, folks, to the Real Estate Show. I'm Alice Lema. I'm your host today, broker with John L. Scott here in Southern Oregon. And we're having a super educational conversation with Tina Grimes, who is the CEO of the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors here locally. Thanks again, Tina, for being on the show today.
My pleasure.
So during the break, one of the things we started chatting about that I think is just such a topic of conversation in everybody's household in Southern Oregon is just how wild and crazy the market has been this year. What's it been like for you guys?
Nuts. I mean, you know, so for people who don't understand, the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, we're not a real estate office ourselves. People like Alice and all the other brokers out there, they are members of ours, and we're providing services to them. But as a result, we keep an eye on the overall market, because obviously that affects our members. So it's been a crazy, you know, we've seen the insane multiple offer frenzy and offering way over asking price that we saw in the summer and early fall. Thankfully, that is calming down. You know, but that's partly driven by the extreme lack of inventory that we have. And that's a nationwide problem, is the lack of inventory. And then ours was, of course, grossly exacerbated by the Alameda fire and losing, you know, 2,500 homes. So our inventory shortage became even worse. So I have an interesting piece here that I printed out. So Elliot Eisenberg, he's a national economist. And this was just night before last in his daily email. He said the homeownership vacancy rate is 0.9%, the lowest rate since at least 1956. The rental vacancy rate is 5.8%. This is nationwide. Ours is a lot lower here locally. The lowest rate since 1984. Existing inventory is 1.27 million, the lowest October reading in over 20 years. Built new inventory is at its lowest level since at least 1973, and the cost to buy a single wide manufactured home, which we were talking about earlier, went from $55,000 pre-COVID to $70,200 today.
Oh, that happened nationwide. Oh
nationwide.
My gosh, I didn't know that was nationwide.
Yeah, I think it's worse for us because of the Alameda fire, but it's a nationwide issue. So, you know, the sad thing is there's not an easy fix on the horizon. You know, part of the problem is that there were so many subcontractors left the industry back in 2008 and 2009 after things crashed and never came back. So we got plenty of general contractors, but they don't have the subs available to do the work. And then just, you know, the land use laws, and this is not unique to Oregon, this is everywhere, but the land use laws make it so restrictive and cost prohibitive that they can't, it's hard for them to build an affordable house because contractors are not nonprofits. You need to make a living.
Yeah, and the fees alone for doing new construction, I think the general public would be shocked how many tens of thousands of dollars before you even buy a hammer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I may not be quoting this exactly correct, so take it with a grain of salt, but a gentleman from the Oregon Economic Department, this was a couple of years ago, made the comment that he said we need to build a certain number of new homes every year in order to keep up with supply. And that could be apartment complexes, it could be single family homes, but new dwellings every year, a certain number needs to be built. And for almost 10 years, we've only been building 10% of that each year.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So we have a lot of catching up to do, huge amount of catching up to do.
So, and that really affects the prices.
It does.
As well. Yeah. The selection.
It's a basic high school economics supply and demand problem. We don't have enough supply, but we still have the demand. So therefore the prices are going up.
We are seeing more listings coming on the market, but they're being absorbed.
Right.
Yeah. And it seems that the winter months are really active, unusually so. Are you noticing anything along those lines?
I would agree with that. Normally we see a huge slowdown in the winter, but last year and this year we have not seen that. Last year we thought it was just because of the Alameda fire. This year but we're seeing similar numbers this year. So it might be a new normal.
We're wondering about that because, if the impact of the remote worker, if some huge percentage of the remote working force never goes back, and that affects the houses people buy and where people live, then Southern Oregon all of a sudden gets way more popular.
Yeah. And that is actually a trend that I've seen them talk about on the national level, is they're seeing a migration out of the urban core into smaller towns and even more rural settings because of the ability to do remote work now. COVID has changed a lot of things. That's just one of them.
I haven't heard any statistics about the schooling. If the folks that have school-age children, how they're adapting or not, because I know some of the schools are offering hybrid, but I'm still getting a lot of requests for houses that have an extra room because they're going to be doing more at home. And that affects our supply as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because a family, of parents and 2 kids that used to want a 3-bedroom house now are wanting a 4-bedroom house or a 5-bedroom house, even, so that they can have a home office plus a schoolroom. Who knows?
Yeah, we just don't have that. And so, and then a couple or a single person that used to buy a 1 or 2 bedroom, now they're going into the 3 bedroom, 2 bath. Yeah. Yeah.
It's definitely changed the dynamics of the demand.
Yeah, it really does. So let's talk about how the agents, for you guys, we've called members, but the brokers here in Southern Oregon, how many did we have when the year started? Have we seen an increase, a decrease? How's the agent population reacting?
Well, let's see. I will tell you that we actually anticipated there to be a decline this year, and instead we saw the exact opposite.
Really?
We experienced a 10% increase this year.
Wow. Anybody saying?
And we were expecting about a 4 or 5% decrease, and we instead got a 10% increase.
Wow. So what changed? Yeah. Do we know?
All I can figure is that the frenzy of the market attracted new licensees. So because most of them are brand new licensees. They're not people moving into the area from somewhere else.
Oh, I see. So they're locals that got licensed.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I know during the initial shutdown, I feel like we're way past that now, but the initial shutdown, I did have a lot of phone calls from people asking me what it would take to become a broker in Southern Oregon because they were in quarantine.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's how they spent their quarantine.
Right. Getting their license. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we saw more this year than we saw last year. And I thought last year was a lot. So
yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, Okay, so do we know what the membership is in Southern Oregon? Like about how many agents are there?
Yeah, there's right at 1,400 in both and that covers both Jackson and Josephine counties.
Okay, okay, because Klamath County has its own
Yeah,
realtor
yeah,
group.
yeah, but they've seen an increase too. I know they were a couple hundred, and I think they're pushing 250. So
Wow.
yeah,
And that area is really growing leaps and
yeah,
bounds. The
huge.
prices are going up there too.
Yeah.
So what
Well,
kind of,
and
oh, go ahead.
Central Oregon, who's our, I mean, we work closely with them too. The Central Oregon Association, they boomed too. And remember, it's all over the state.
Uh-huh.
I think on a state level, we went from like, I want to say we gained a couple of thousand
Wow.
licensees this last year on a state level. So I don't know that that's the exact number, but I'm pretty sure it was 14 something at the beginning of the year. And the last number I saw was just shy of 16. So
Wow. Wow.
yeah.
That's really, there's been so many surprises coming out of the COVID and the Alameda fires. So let's see. One of the other questions we wanted to ask you had to do with any new training requirements, when we had our legislative session, or has the Association of Realtors changed or added any training?
Well, one of the things that did change this last year, that did get approved legislatively this last year, that you guys will see starting in January. So for the people listening who aren't licensees and don't know this, all real estate licensees are required to have 30 hours of education, continuing education, every 2 years for their license renewal. And 3 hours of that 30 hours must be something that is called the Law and Rule Required Course, or LARC. The initials spell LARC, so that's what we all call it. So one of the things that the legislature passed this last year is that LARC course now must also contain a fair housing element. So it must contain instruction on fair housing and anti-discrimination practices. So that'll be a change that you guys as licensees see happen this coming year.
Great, great. Well, and the ongoing education that your office provides is amazing. I mean, we have people from out of the area comment on the breadth and the depth of the topics and the quality of the instructors.
I mean, you guys are required to have 30 hours every 2 years, but we provide over 200 hours per year. So you definitely don't have to worry about hitting your minimum 30 hours.
Yeah. And you always provide really interesting, relevant topics. In Southern Oregon, so much of it is agricultural. You really have a lot of the percentage of the courses available in helping the agents understand more deeply the real property, the laws, the zoning, the planning. Yeah. The water or lack of water.
Yeah. Which hopefully this winter will change some of that. We're off to a good start.
We are, as we're sitting here freezing in our offices.
Yeah.
So, and what are some of the other services that the Rogue Valley Association just provides in general? You've got your agents that you take care of. You've got some obligation to the general public. What does all that entail?
Yeah. So, education is one of the big things we do, obviously, as we've just mentioned. One of the other big things we do in this, it's not only for the licensee, but also for property owners, is we do a lot of legislative advocacy, and we are protecting private property rights. We are advocating for wise taxation, for wise land use, for quality communities. So those are the kinds of things we advocate for. And we're one of the few trade organizations that doesn't just advocate for our members, but also for our members' clients. So that's something. And this coming year is going to be huge because it's going to be such a big election year. So we're already gearing up for that to be a crazy busy year in that arena. So, but some of the things that are coming up, I know, mortgage interest deduction is always a big hot topic of conversation at the state level. So we'll be watching that real closely to make sure they don't mess with that. And then one of the other things that we definitely provide, and again, this is a consumer thing, is we enforce the Realtor Code of Ethics. So if you have a complaint against a realtor, if you feel like maybe somebody hasn't quite done what they should be doing correctly, then you contact us and we will walk you through the process. So Those are some of the big things we provide. And then of course, just networking and fundraising events. Unfortunately, with COVID, we haven't been able to do this the last couple of years, but the year before, when things were still active, we would consistently raise between $60,000 and $80,000 a year for local charities. So
wow, 60,000. Wow. That is a ton of money.
Yeah.
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 Well, it's oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, I'm hoping we can resume that in 2022.
Yes, we'll have to see how the variants go. But so we have to take a quick break. Don't touch that dial. Tina Grimes, CEO, Rogue Valley Associate of Realtors, will be right back with more great info. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Real Estate Show. I'm Alice Lema, your host today, broker at John L. Scott. Tina Grimes is here, bringing us up to speed on what's going on with the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. She is the CEO over at the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. And one of the educational areas that you guys are so good about providing updates for the agents is fire prevention and the Firewise program in particular. You want to speak to that?
Sure. Yeah. So this was actually back in in early 2020. We started meeting with the city of Ashland. We partnered with them on a project, just a Firewise awareness campaign. And actually it was all set to launch right after Labor Day of 2020. And then the fires happened and we said, okay, pause.
Yeah. Wow.
So we relaunched the campaign this last spring, in preparation so that people could use the summer to get themselves ready. But it's just an amazing campaign. We sent out postcards. We've done social media, direct marketing, and this was really targeted towards Ashland residents for starters.
Mm-hmm.
But we have seen a huge awareness. The Ashland Fire and Rescue has reported a lot of people calling and saying, okay, what can I do with my home? We actually held a course for home inspectors.
Nice.
For them to be able to tell people what kind of Firewise initiatives they can take with their home to make it a little more safe. And had 15 of our local home inspectors attend that class that are now certified to evaluate homes based on that.
Wow.
So that was a big thing that we did. And we'll be posting that list on our website here pretty soon. So, that was one of the pieces, and we viewed it as a pilot program. And so now that we know it was successful, we're starting to talk to other fire districts in the area. Ashland is its own fire district. So we've already met with Fire District 3, which is Eagle Point, Sam's Valley area. We're going to be meeting soon with all of the fire districts in both Jackson and Josephine counties. We're going to be reaching out to them and saying, hey, we'd like to partner with you on making people more aware of what they can do with their home.
That is so cool and so proactive on behalf of consumers and our community in general. I just love what you guys do at the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. And so the inspectors that, so there's 15 inspectors that have been trained to do the Firewise.
Trained by the national, I got to remember all the initials, but it's the National Fire Protection Agency. I believe that's the full name. But they sent someone out and it was a 2-day training. They gave up 2 full days of their business to sit in this training to get certified to inspect homes for Firewise features.
Wow. So, I don't know that anybody knows about that.
Yeah. Well, it's a recent thing. So like I said, we're going to be getting the list of which of those inspectors attended and are now certified up on our website so that people can go look for, and I mean, you don't have to be in the middle of a transaction. You could reach out to one of those inspectors and say, hey, please come take a look at my home and tell me what I need to do.
Yeah, that would be a great winter thing to do when it's not an emergency.
Right.
Wow,
right.
That's beautiful. So 15 inspectors recently certified for Firewise prevention.
Yeah.
For your property.
Firewise features on your property. Yeah.
Wow, that is super cool.
And it's things from what kind of landscaping to plant that's less, fire prone. It's what kind of, how far away fences should be from your house, what kind of screen material to put on your vents. I mean, it runs the gamut.
Wow.
So
See, we don't even think about that.
yeah,
We don't
yeah,
even think about that. That's so great. Well, I will be watching your website, looking for that list, and
yeah.
can't wait. Maybe, maybe we'll kind of email our
Yeah,
brokerages.
we'll send out an email to all the,
Yeah,
we'll include it in the weekly email once we get that
yeah.
up on the site. So,
Super exciting. And then one of the other topics coming up, I think in 2022, that's going to be a hotbed of controversy is energy efficiency. What's going on with
yeah.
that?
A lot of the local municipalities well, and at the state level as well, are looking at, because energy costs just keep going up, and they're not gonna go down anytime soon. So they're looking at energy efficiency measures. Builders are starting to be more aware of energy efficiency pieces, and I know, in Ashland and Talent specifically, there's some builders that's all they will build is energy efficient homes. So we're going to see a lot more of that, I think. Some of the, from a legislative perspective, I know some of the municipalities are starting to look at energy score type programs. Those have their pros and cons, because obviously a home that was built last year with energy efficient features is going to have one score, whereas that 100-year-old Victorian home that's being used as a B&B is going to score poorly. But you can't just look at the score. You have to take it in context of the property. So it's, we're hoping to embark on some education related to that and how that will help, and really try to approach it from a, hey, look what you could do perspective, rather than a here's what you must do type of stance.
Oh,
So,
that would be nice. It would be great if it could be voluntary.
yeah. Yeah. So, and so like I said, we're working with the municipalities that we're hearing about doing that, and hoping to do some consumer education campaigns similar maybe to what we did with the Firewise stuff.
That would be great. So do you
So
think that's going to roll out in 2022, the energy efficiency
I hope
education?
so. It's still in the infancy stages, the conversations. So, well, that remains to be seen, but I'm hoping so.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then I wonder about the inspectors again, because we'll need to
Yes.
have a certain group of folks who are able to do those
Well,
energy
and
scores.
on that front too, a big piece of it will be the appraisers, because I know they have had, they don't really have a way of appraising green features.
Uh-huh.
So hopefully that's something we can work with the state appraisal board on, and maybe we can come out with some, not requirements, that's not the word I'm looking for, some parameters as to how they would appraise.
So that they would be adding value for some of
Yeah,
those features.
yeah,
I see. I
yeah.
see. Right.
So,
We always forget about those appraisers, don't we?
yeah,
They need to be
yeah,
looped in too.
yeah.
So going back to the Firewise certification, do the appraisers have to have anything updated if a home's
In
had those?
that hasn't been a piece of it yet. Like I said, we started with the home inspectors, knowing that would be something that the consumers could really utilize even
Mm-hmm.
outside of a transaction. So we
Mm-hmm.
wanted to get that piece done first. But this will be an ongoing project for several
Mm-hmm.
years.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And then going back to the energy efficiency score, how likely is it that it's going to be voluntary? I mean, I know you're just making a professional guesstimate, but I'm just wondering, what your thoughts on that being
Honestly, I
voluntary.
don't know, because that's something that could be different from one municipality to another.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that
Well,
is
just the
that is
climate. Yeah.
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 And in some cities it has worked great. In other cities that have already tried it, it has been an abysmal failure if
Oh
they've
dear.
mandated it. In other cities that have tried voluntary, it has worked great, and in other cities where it's been voluntary, they've had no participation. So it just, I don't know. I mean, it's really just going to depend on how they roll it out, the kind of education that gets done. I think it really hinges on the education that goes along with the program as to
Yeah.
whether it succeeds or fails.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Tina Grimes, you are always a wealth of information and so fun to talk to. We'd love to have you back on the show early next year to kind of keep us apprised of how all these changes are coming about in the state of Oregon.
Happy to come back anytime.
And our local Southern Oregon Rogue Valley Association CEO, Tina Grimes, thank you so much. We'll be back next week. Have a beautiful Southern Oregon weekend. Bye now.